Welcome to Quest Culture Podcast, your place for all things sci-fi, fantasy, horror, action, and all things movies, television, print, and with a little culture here and there. I'm here, one of your hosts of the podcast, Brendon, and I'm here with longtime friend LuDana Jeter, right there, in the very cool T-shirt and shoes. And then right across the way, we have my cousin, one of my best friends, Professor Sheldon Applewhite.
Hey guys,
welcome.
He also has. I'm back.
He also has a very, very cool starfish, coffee, maple syrup, and jam.
Yeah, a tribute to one of my favorite artists.
All right,
and to my new purple sneaker
that
I got from See It Collective. Right?
You know, I'm gonna zoom in.
We shouted.
Lift the other one, so they can see the other side, so they can see the profile.
Hey.
Nice.
See It Collective. Shout out to See It Collective.
Nice, nice. You want to describe them for him real quick on there? People can't see.
What, the shoe or
the shoe? Yeah.
It's like a purple rubber. The insoles come out.
Who makes them?
The name of the person is called Saya Collective, actually.
Okay.
You can find it on Instagram at Saya Collective. My doorman had a pair of these, and I was like, oh, those are cool sneakers. You know, this is about a year ago. And I was like, where'd you get them from? Because I'm not really a sneakerhead.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, Saya Collective. He gave me the site. So I've been watching the guy. The guy makes customizable sneakers or whatever. And then finally, I just kind of like, I don't know what it was about these. I went on the site and I saw these purple sneakers, and I don't wear purple at all, actually. This is like the third.
Purple today. So.
I'm wearing a lot of purple today. It's very motivating. But they say, purple is the color of royalty. So,
yes. King.
So when I saw these, they just spoke to me. They're rubber. They're comfortable.
All right.
I like
they look comfortable.
You know, and so I just thought I'd rock it out with some purple today. You know,
yeah,
I had a Black Panther shirt, but I was like, let me go with the classic. You know,
royalty, honoring to
royalty. That's right.
It's all right.
So I'm glad to be here. I had COVID the last time. So
yes, all right. So we're gonna rock it this time. I'm excited about this one today because I know we decided we were going to talk about our favorite films, right, and our favorite directors in particular, right? So. I'm so excited to have today writer, director, artist, activist.
I don't like activist.
Revolutionary.
Agitator.
Agitator.
Yeah.
Agitator.
Not a revolutionary. Agitator, yeah.
Agitator.
Yeah.
And I'm just excited to see what happens today. Vagabond Beaumont.
Oh, thank you very much. Nice to be here. Nice to be here.
So what's been going on? You just, I want to get to our favorite directors for sure, but what have you been doing? I know you just had a showing recently, right?
Yeah, I had an art show. I've been working in the Puerto Rican independence movement. For people who don't know, Puerto Rico has been a colony in the United States since 1898, Spanish-American War. And I've been doing art since 98, really 97. Okay. And I have a mural that was illegally painted on 105th Street and 3rd Avenue called the Dos Alas Che Bisu mural. And it's like, it started out, when we first painted it in 98, it was 13 feet high by 60 feet long.
Wow.
And we painted it without asking permission. We just did it. It just celebrated 26 years this summer.
Oh, wow.
So I'm really, so at the as the 25th anniversary was coming up, I talked to a friend of mine about doing a show about my art over the past 25 years for the Puerto Rican independence movement. And I did it at a gallery in East Harlem, otherwise known as Spanish Harlem, otherwise known as El Barrio, called Taller Boricua. And so the show was supposed to run from May 24th to July 27th, and then it got extended to August 17th. Yeah. And so it just finished up. Yeah. But I'm right now I'm working on putting a book together of that artwork, because a lot of it is about heroes and characters and people that most people don't know about. People like Albizu and Lolita and Filiberto and Betances. And because I've used a lot of those people in my artwork, but people don't know their stories, I can give a little bit of background.
Sure.
So it's a weird thing because I started to put the book together, and it's like an art history book, but not for art history, but
don't they
for history and
coincide?
art. They do.
Yeah.
They do. But I was just putting together a book of art, and then I realized I have to give it some sort of context for people who don't know. They're a majority of Puerto Ricans don't know. You know what I mean? It's like Puerto Ricans are badasses. I mean, we tried to kill Truman in 1950.
Yeah.
That's true.
We had 2 assassins that went after him.
That's true.
You know, we shot up the House of Congress in 1954.
Yeah, I recently learned about the attack on the Capitol.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
Only recently too, like the last few years.
I was like, that was hard.
When
That's
when the whole
hardcore.
Trump thing happened on January 6th, I was
That's
sitting there
how I
going,
found out about it. Yeah.
are y'all going to get 25 years? Because I know a lot of people. I know some people in 1954 who did 25 years. So I'm
Right.
just saying,
First
Right.
of all,
there's, and then in
Maybe you should give a little backdrop to that because some people may not know.
So in 1954, there was a woman named Lolita Lebron. She led 3 other men to Washington, D.C. They took a train down to D.C. They went into the House of Congress. They shot the place up and unfurled a Puerto Rican flag. And I think 5 or 6 congressmen were wounded. And they were captured. And the cool thing about Lolita was when they captured her, they said, well, what was your purpose? Because they were just trying to get, global attention on colonialism in Puerto Rico, right?
Oh, okay.
And they said, "Oh, who are you trying to kill?" And she says, "I didn't come here to kill." She says, "I came here to die."
Powerful.
That's
resistance.
she wasn't playing,
Yeah.
right? And so what happened was in 1979, the Carter administration was complaining to the Russians about their political prisoners. And then the Russians were like, yeah, but you have the longest held female political prisoner in the world. She's been in prison for 25 years. And then, to get biblical about it, Carter had to take the log out of his eye so he could talk about the speck in somebody else's eye. And he let them go.
Wow.
He let them go.
did he catch a lot of heat for that?
Everybody does it at the end of their term, you know what I mean? At the end of their 4 years. So they
Probably didn't even really notice.
Yeah. So, but it was like they had done 25 years already. And also the one.
So if it weren't for Carter, she would have done. She
She'd
probably still would have been there.
Probably still be in jail.
But maybe not, because Puerto Ricans have a history of getting their folks out. You know what I mean? We have a history of getting our political prisoners out. That happened again in 1999 when Hillary Clinton was running for U.S. Senate. And she thought that if she let them out, she would get in good with the Puerto Ricans or Latino vote and so on and so forth. And, and so we got,
Hillary.
I think we got 11 of our people out in 99.
Wow.
In September of 99. Yeah.
So how does all that, like, if that kind of sensibility, how does that affect? How does that affect your filmmaking, the choices of subject making that you have created and that you put out there?
So when I
weren't some of those pieces, weren't they from some of your
some of them, yeah. So like I did a feature film called Machetero.
Yeah.
It was sort of a fictionalized piece about a political prisoner. It starred Isaac de Bancole, who for people who are into really popular stuff, the last thing that he was in was Godfather of Harlem.
Okay.
Okay. He's the black dude who's with the French guy when they're buying the heroin. Okay. I think he loses his head. Spoiler alert.
Great show.
But he's worked with like some of the top directors. He's worked with Lars von Trier. He's worked with Jim Jarmusch. He's worked with Michael Mann. He's worked with top people. And he was a friend of mine. I met him on a show when I was working on a film called The Keeper with Giancarlo Esposito, Regina Taylor, and Isaac. And a bunch of other people. I mean, like,
very cool.
Corey Glover was in it. A bunch of other
Wow.
people. Yeah. And so I was a second AD. I was a second assistant director.
Okay.
So I got to know them really well.
Yeah.
And I asked them to be in this film. And so Machetero is a film about a French journalist who comes to the United States to interview a Puerto Rican, quote unquote, terrorist in prison about why he's decided to use violence as a means of liberation.
Wow.
So yeah, that film had more to do with 9/11 than anything else.
Yeah.
Because after 9/11, I was like, how come nobody's asking questions that should be asked. Like,
Sure, absolutely.
you know, people attack you, and the first thing you want to do is destroy them.
Right.
And it's like I always use this analogy: like if you're walking down the street and somebody smacks you in the back of the head, your first inclination is not to reach for a gun and shoot them. The first inclination is,
Why'd you do that?
What did I do to you, bro? Like, where's this coming from? You know what I mean? And that never happened.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do a film that asked, like my grandfather, who was a nationalist, you know, Puerto Rican nationalist. He once said to me, "What one man's revolutionary is another man's, you know, terrorist." So it's just a matter of how those things are defined. So all that stuff is just all that wound up in the show.
Why do you think people didn't ask questions, or more people?
Because they don't want to answer.
And because they just want to rely on other folks to tell them.
Are you talking about
media.
9/11?
The media. Yeah. They just want the media to tell them what's
It
going
fed
on.
into their xenophobia, right? It fed into their otherness of other groups, right? Like someone somewhere else, some foreign entity attacked us, right? Let's get them. I remember that you know, that swirl, that flurry of like violence, right? I was teaching middle school at the time, and you know, some of my students or students at my school, they were out just attacking bodegas.
What?
Not really even knowing if the people who ran the bodega was Islamic or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was a flurry of
And that's interesting because right around that time, so it's like 2001. That's around the time that the transition happens from, you have the Puerto Rican bodegas, and then they switch over to Dominicans, and then the Dominicans switch over, don't ask me how, but the Yemenis.
yes, the Yemenis, right? In Harlem, the
Right.
Yemenis
So,
are
but the Yemenis are the new bodega owners, right?
yeah.
So it's a weird thing because that's the time when the Dominicans are switching over. The Yemenis are taking
Are
over.
you
from
saying
the
that Puerto
Dominicans.
Ricans don't own bodegas like they
They
used to?
do. They don't. Not like
Not like they used to.
No, not like they used to.
Okay.
No.
You know, and I'm very curious about this whole Yemenis angle. Because there's so many in my
Yeah.
neighborhood. So, but that's another day.
Yeah, but that's an American phenomena.
Yeah.
Like one person from an ethnic group gets here and they get into a business, and then they bring family, and then everybody's in that business.
It's definitely a network.
Yeah, you know what I mean. It's a thing.
Yeah.
It is.
You know,
network.
there's a reason why it's a Chinese laundromat.
Yeah. You know, I'll be up at like 145th and I'll go into a bodega and I'll see somebody in there. And then like after a few months, I won't see him there. And then I'll go down to like 121st Street and he'll be in the bodega down
Right.
there. I'm
Right.
like, what's going on here?
Right.
So I'm just trying to figure out how to say this. You have this focus on like the politics of Puerto Rico
Right.
for this film. For your first film that you ever did, was it political in orientation? And what inspired
I can't even
you?
remember what the first film was.
You don't remember your first film?
You know, because it's a weird thing. Because what happened was I was going to music and art. I've been an artist since I was 11. Now, from the time I was 11, I wanted to be a comic book artist. And then the funny thing is that right around the time that Frank Miller starts to draw Daredevil, I have this epiphany because he's very cinematic. He breaks the mold in terms of the way that frames are in comic books. Right?
Now, just to be clear, like you're a comic book reader,
Yeah.
right? And is that how you guys know each other?
No.
He directed a video.
Music video.
for
Oh,
two
music
videos for
video,
the Impossible
okay.
Kings.
Yeah.
Okay. And Frank Miller also did Batman, just right?
Frank Miller did Dark Knight Returns.
Okay. Just
Right.
okay.
But he's got like his big acclaim came from Daredevil, taking over Daredevil, right?
Okay.
Writing and drawing Daredevil.
Yeah.
And the frames the way that he was doing things was very cinematic. And I was like, oh, this is how I imagine what I want to do. And then I got very frustrated trying to do comic books because I couldn't express myself in the way that I wanted to. And then I went to go see a movie
Wait,
called
why? Why couldn't you express yourself?
because it just wasn't flowing the way I wanted it
Oh,
to.
it wasn't flowing the way
You know what I mean?
I
It
can
was
see
like,
the frames though as you're talking about it.
So what you did right, I'm assuming is going to be a was a Puerto Rican superhero.
Well, Machetero is a Puerto Rican superhero movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, he breaks out of prison. Because we've had Puerto Ricans break out of prison too. Because we're superheroes.
Yeah.
You know?
So was there a film or a show or something that made
Yeah,
you
there
say,
was a film
I need to
that.
pick up this camera, I need to do my own thing?
So the film that made me want to become a filmmaker was Clint Eastwood's Pale Rider. I went to the Ziegfeld.
I would never
That
have
was one
guessed
of my
that.
daddy's favorite movies.
It's a fantastic film.
Wow.
And I'm sitting in, so for some reason, so like it's really weird because like, you know, I remember I was in London and I was trying to do this documentary and, you know, on the last, one of the last poets, Abidun Oyewole, who's one of the original last poets. And like, I'm flying out there. He doesn't have a cell phone. So I have to find him in London before he does his show. I'm flying out there with like, you know, me and my DP. I don't know if I'm gonna find him. I don't know if I'm gonna get in touch with him in time and all this stuff. So there's all this insanity, right? And so we had an intern with us and he said to me, do you have any advice that you could give me about the film industry? And I said, yes. I said, I only have one piece of advice. And that is that you can love filmmaking all you want, but it will never love you back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I realized, the moment I said that, that's when I realized, oh, wait a second. I don't have to try and quit this anymore because I didn't choose it. It chose me. And that's when I look back, I would sit under I would sit at the very back of the theater so that I could hear the projector run when the film got when the scenes got really quiet, and I would hear
Yeah.
and there was something comforting about it. And so I was sitting in the back
I love that.
watching Pale Rider, and I'm like, and if you ever seen Pale Rider, the way that the film opens is gorgeous. It's amazing.
I've never seen it.
So in the opening, there's a girl and she's reading from the Book of Revelation. And they're cutting between this girl reading from the Book of Revelation and this mysterious character riding a white horse dressed all in black. And she gets to the part in the Bible where she says, and him that rode on him was death, and hell followed with him. And then when she says that, they cut to Clint Eastwood. Now, you haven't seen this man's face or who this mysterious rider. They cut to him and you see Clint Eastwood. That's not a big deal. What's a big deal is that the man's wearing a collar.
Mm-hmm.
He's a preacher, okay? He's riding a pale horse. He is death riding a pale horse, and hell is following with him, but he's a preacher. And I looked at that and I was like, wait, you can't do that in a comic book. Like you can't, it doesn't have the same punch. Like you can draw it and read it, but it doesn't have that punch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, oh, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, if you were going to do it in a book, it would have to be in a cinematic way.
right. I mean, it can be
You
done.
couldn't do it
But
as it
that's
has
what
been
you-
done.
And that's what you appreciated about Frank Miller's work.
Right.
Yeah.
The way that he told his stories, and then what happened was that sent me down, you know, a rabbit hole of trying to express myself in a cinematic way.
Yeah.
Right. And then I got frustrated with it, and then I moved over to film. And
Do
that
you
was-
think your work is an ode to that style now, or?
No, I don't. I think that like if you watch a lot of comic book movies, you need a lot of gear, and I don't have a lot of gear.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I have to learn how to strip everything down,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and
So-
make it simple.
Who directed that film?
Clint Eastwood.
So is Clint Eastwood one of your favorite directors?
No.
You said that very quickly. Is there a reason why?
Zero hesitation.
I think there's some movies that Clint Eastwood has directed that I
he's done
do
some
like.
fantastic films.
Right? He did.
Bird. He
I
put,
didn't
he
see
put
Bird.
Forrest Whitaker on.
I didn't
literally.
see Bird. Yeah.
Yeah.
He put and Forrest Whitaker was an
directed
unknown.
that?
Yeah.
You mean he
Well,
put him on? He put him on before what, like Fast Times at Ridgemont High?
No. What I'm saying is like Forrest Whitaker gained
as a lead
his
role.
recognition
Gotcha.
as a
You mean
leading
global-
man,
okay.
as someone
Because-
who could hold a film. How they say, you know,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
you know,
He directed Unforgiven, right?
Unforgiven.
He did Unforgiven.
Fantastic.
And then did he do $1 Million Baby?
$1 Million
Yes.
Baby.
Yeah, that was
Okay,
another great
yeah.
one. I can only watch
Okay.
that one time too.
So he's a good
Dark.
director.
And then
He's
what
not
was
my
the one
favorite.
where El Camino? No, not El Camino. Sorry,
Yep.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, it was El Camino. He did do that. Okay,
Yeah.
because that's also a spinoff
when he-
to
see,
Breaking
so-
Bad. So I had.
Oh
to keep it-
no, not El Camino. He did.
No, it's
Gran Torino.
Gran
Gran
Torino.
Torino. Yes. Sorry.
Sounds
Sorry,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
cars. I'm getting them
Yeah.
mixed up. Yes.
Right.
Gran Torino. I
Right.
did love that movie.
Yeah.
But that's when
I
he
liked
starts
it.
to become like grumpy old white dude.
Yeah, that's when he starts to decline. I mean,
grumpy
I've
to
never
me.
right.
Yeah, he got
Yeah.
became grumpy.
That's when he sat on
like
his-
90-something years old.
I
Yeah,
know.
that's when he's on the
Ah,
stage,
I
like
never-
having an imaginary
The hell?
conversation, right?
Right.
But
chair.
that's another. That's another.
And that's a funny thing, because if you go back to the 60s,
he was not that person.
he's not that person.
Yeah.
He's
so
the complete
crazy.
opposite.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So
Yeah.
then, who is your favorite director right now? And I say right now, because I know it's hard.
I got
You got a bunch.
a bunch.
All right, top first person you think of.
Yeah. that you think
I
of.
would
Don't, you're thinking too
Jim
much?
Jarmusch.
Who?
Explain.
Jim Jarmusch.
Okay.
I always tell people when I grow up, I want to
Okay.
be Jim Jarmusch.
Explain.
I just, he has a simple way of.
Please, can you tell me first who Jim Jarmusch
So
is?
Jim Jarmusch did a bunch of movies. I'm trying to think of something that people would know. Ghost Dog.
Oh, I
Red
saw
Salmon.
Ghost Dog with Forrest
Forrest
Whitaker.
Whitaker.
Yeah. Which I thought was a interesting and strange movie.
Yeah. It's a gangster hip hop
yes.
mobster film.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, Jim Jarmusch, Francis Ford Coppola. I don't like all his films, but I would put him at the very top. I mean, because my favorite movie is Apocalypse Now of all
Okay.
time. Like that, I can. People always say, "What's your favorite?" I can do off the top of my head.
Is there a contemporary director right now you think will be, and I know you probably have a couple, but just one you think will be, a generation from now, Harold, like a
No,
Okay.
No director
That was
now.
instant.
Wow.
No.
Okay.
no. I
There's
think
nobody
I think,
they're going to talking about like they're.
I think
like
they're
Citizen
don't get me
Kane
wrong.
or-
There's somebody out there, but they're not getting the play.
Got it.
They're not getting the financing from the studios or the distribution from the studios or anything like that. There's like absolutely nobody who's done one film or two films or whatever that I'm excited about.
And you think that's because their projects are not getting picked, or they're not getting picked for projects by the larger.
No, I just don't think. I think we're in a really weird time in now.
You mean in terms of like the time after all the movies that were produced during and after the pandemic, or just a
No, I
weird
mean,
time for
I think
filmmaking?
I think in general,
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
the world is in a very strange place.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that we're coming to the culmination. I think the biggest problem that we face right now, globally, everyone, is that capitalism no longer needs democracy.
No.
I agree with you.
Okay. And so the
I
my
might
thesis on this is that communism was a check on capitalism.
right.
Because the capitalists could be like, listen, them communists over there, they throw you in jail if you don't agree. They throw you in jail for this, that, and the other thing, and so on and so forth. And capitalism's, that's not us.
Right.
And then when communism fell, capitalism was like, but communism has some good ideas, though. You know what I mean? Like, let's just throw some motherfuckers in jail. You know what I mean? Like, let's go after Julian Assange. You know what I mean?
So how does that affect who gets
Yeah.
picked for like projects and such, or who they decide?
That's what I mean. So so I think that the problem now is the biggest problem with the film industry is that they are not speaking to people's reality.
Yeah. Sure.
And so people don't want to come to the theater
Sure.
because there's nothing that they can walk away with, right? I think the last film or the last two films, and I'm going to talk about a film that I don't like,
Mm-hmm.
but that still had something to say,
Mm.
right? And I appreciate the fact that it had something to say. I just don't like the filmmakers in any which way, shape, or form. But if you look at Oppenheimer and Barbie, right? So Barbie, I'll start with the one I don't like. I don't like Greta Gerwig. I think she's wiki whack.
Oh shoot! Oh my god!
Wickety,
Did she
wickety,
do?
And I
Bur-
think-
did
and I
she do
think-
little bird? What's it?
Yeah, and her husband is even wiki whacker, which is Noah Baumbach. They wrote the script for Barbie,
Okay.
right? And it's almost like we could get into something else about that too, which is
So Barbie is the one you don't like.
Vagabond,
I don't
am
like Barbie.
So glad
Okay.
that you brought that. I have tried 3 times to watch that movie. I'm
They're-
like,
they're
what
It's not a
the
good film,
fuck?
but
Right.
it has something to say.
What did it
right.
say?
It has
Well, I
some
mean, it
important
has something to
parts
say
it.
about
Yeah.
sexism and about
Right.
misogyny and so on
Right.
and so forth. It's flawed,
Right.
there's problems with it, right?
Like it definitely has a message about misogyny for sure, and
Right.
feminism or whatever, but it's also almost using this sort of like objectification of women as like a tool to prop up, like,
But it's also-
let's reject misogyny. You know what I
It's also
mean?
weird in that Ken wants to stay over at the beginning with Barbie.
Yeah.
And she's
Yeah.
like, no, but we're having a girls' sleepover.
Right.
Right.
And she's like, why don't you go home? And he's like, I don't even know if I have a home. And I was like, but is this just the reverse? Right? Is this the reverse?
You know,
I mean,
what?
I think we just,
Yeah, I
in
mean,
the 70s,
Yeah.
it became legal for women to be able to get a credit card,
Credit card. Yep.
right? So
Our
I'm asking, is Barbie the flip side?
Well,
Because it's
some
not-
people do view equality that way, right? Like that, not that everyone is equal, but now the power shifts to the
Right.
marginalized group.
And so even the idea, right, that comes up, right? So now, like a lot of people were like, "Oh, this is just man hating," and I'm like, "It's not man hating.
Right.
It's literally holding up a mirror,
Right.
right, and asking you." So even if the film is badly executed, in my opinion, and it's corny and whack, and there's really nowhere else for this thing to go, they
Right.
will make 2 and 3.
Oh,
Right.
There's nowhere to
Oh my
go,
God.
but
please
they will
don't.
make 2 and 3.
Father in heaven, please.
So, like, I mean, you and I went to see it together, and we had a lot
and I
of thoughts.
refuse to go with them. Because
Yeah, and we had a lot of thoughts
going.
about it, and we went to see it, I think, very purposefully because we were two men, right, going to be supportive
To
of
see
a
the
movie
message,
and to
yeah.
figure it
Right.
out, right? Yeah. But I agree with you. I want to kind of like extend on something you said about capitalism, right? Do you think capitalism is at the point where it's like advanced capitalism? So all the things that are being produced is because there's so much money to be put out there that it produces so many.
No, I think we're beyond capitalism.
Late stage.
I think we're moving into
Well, that's what I mean. Like the late stages of capitalism.
no, it's
where,
not a late stage because capitalism keeps morphing.
Okay.
Okay, it keeps morphing. It changes. It's
But the product doesn't. I mean, like, how many versions of Wheaties can you make? That's what I'm saying. Like, how many versions of a bad film can you make? And I just think that advanced capitalism allows for you to make things for mass consumers that really isn't very original or very new or unique.
right. But the thing is that here's the thing. So when I was in London, I was pitching for the same. I went back to London and I pitched this documentary to try and get money, right? We were in this thing called the London finance market. And there were like 35 different people that you had to pitch to, right?
Mhm.
And they made us like practice our pitch. And I was like, I don't practice pitches.
Like elevator pitch kind of thing.
Yeah, but I
Uh-huh.
don't practice pitches. And they were like, what do you mean you don't practice pitches? I know my shit backwards and forwards. Like the moment that I go into an idea, the first thing that I do, and this actually comes from reading an article from Vernon Reed in Spin
Mhm.
magazine,
Hmm.
where he was talking about how Living Color had to be 200% more better than any other band. And the
Mhm.
same thing, and he was talking also about the Bad Brains, right? For people who don't know who the Bad Brains are, the Bad Brains are 4 black brothers from Washington, D.C. who invented hardcore punk.
I love all of this. I'm like,
And they were a huge influence on Living Color. And Living Color said, if you're a person of color, you need to be 200% better than everybody else.
right.
Right? And so that left a huge impression on me. Right?
Mhm.
And so when I'm doing a project, I'm looking at every single way that somebody can attack me. And so I need to have an answer for every single attack that comes my way. Right? And that's how I go into projects.
Mhm.
So there's no plot hole. Or if there's a problem with the film, it's an intentional problem.
Yeah.
I put it there on purpose to
Well,
say something.
That makes a lot of sense because they are going to be looking for some flaws because you are,
Right.
a director of color. So they're going to be looking.
So they're just going
right?
to look.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So that's how I approach, what I do
Mhm.
is from that people are going to attack. So when we were at the London finance market, we did a practice pitch or whatever. But like they said, well, how can you not practice the pitch? And I go, well, I'm doing a documentary on one of the original Last Poets. So the question is, if somebody says, well, what's your film about? I go, it's about one of the original Last Poets. Do you know who the Last Poets are? No. Okay, well then I have to start the pitch somewhere else. I have to explain to you that the Last Poets were hip hop before hip hop even had a name, right? if you know who the Last Poets are, then I can start further in on the pitch. Oh, it's Abby. It's about Abby Dunoyawilla, who's one of the original founding members of the Last Poets.
I mean, it feels like you're almost confirming what I'm saying, though. Like you're coming with an original idea, right? And it's not something in terms of advanced capitalism that's not going to like all, you know, the consumers are not just going to be like, give it to me because I know what it is. I know what you know what I mean. You're giving something original,
but
right?
But to answer your question, all these other filmmakers are coming up and they're nervous with their pitch, right? And you know, so they're practicing their pitch the first day, and the next day we have to pitch, right? So afterwards, we all go to the pub, and and I'm like, you guys got to stop being nervous. I was like, you got to understand something. All of those people that we're pitching to, they don't have anything but money.
Right? Right.
That's not
the issue with capitalism, right?
That's not, but that's not interesting.
There's no ideas.
It's not unique.
Yeah.
What you have, the film that you are going to make, only you can make that film. It's your idea. Yeah. You've been working on it forever. You're the one who has the upper hand here. Not them. They got money. But so do the rest of these motherfuckers.
Right.
It doesn't mean anything, right? You're the one that's unique, not them.
So
and that's how my point.
So you think that's the impediment? That's why good stuff isn't being made?
No, I think it's not being made because artists, first of all, we're in a real serious stalemate in terms of what do we do? Capitalism, for all intents and purposes, is over. It's over. We now live in techno-feudalism. Everything is rent. Netflix, Microsoft, Twitter, Adobe. Everything is a rent, right? Yeah. How can we just rent everything to you, right? So what's that? That's feudalism, right? You're never going to get. It's not like you could be like, yo, tell me how much this is and let's call it a day. That's not possible.
Meaning like you don't really own anything.
You don't own anything.
You're working for.
You're working.
Like, right.
Everything is a rent. Zoom is a rent.
Yeah.
Right? All the things that we need to communicate, the things that we need to do our work.
And that was very intentional, right? But they didn't realize what the...
always in our pocket.
Right. But they didn't realize what the cost of that...
That's because we were in late stage capitalism, right? Where they were like, well, we have pulled out all the money that we can pull out of things as they stand now.
Right.
We need to find a new one.
The physical
and then what happens is
value of things.
It morphs.
Yeah.
Right? And then it becomes rent. And at the same time that things are becoming rent, you have this new fiat currency called cryptocurrency. Right. And it's like, you know, people are like, well, people argue me like, oh, well, you know, it's not real. I'm like, neither is the dollar in your pocket.
Right.
The dollar in your pocket is only real because everyone has agreed that it's going to be real.
That it's real, right.
You know, this was my argument when I was talking to a friend of mine before the pandemic. We were arguing. I said, money don't mean shit. And if we got rid of it, the world would keep moving. The world would keep spinning. The only people that would get hurt are the finance people, finance, insurance, and real estate. Anybody who does things just for money would be screwed. But everybody else would just keep it moving. Yeah. Right? And then he argued me forever.
No, they would just give value to something else.
Who would argue with that?
Because there's a certain because he's locked into the way things are. Okay. And then the pandemic happened, right? And then all the finance people. So I used to argue with people, but why is your banker make more money than the delivery guy? What is the banker doing for you? That delivery guy does more for you than the banker does. What about the person stocking the shelf in the supermarket?
What you're talking about is like labor, right? Like the people who own the means of production versus like the people who actually do the work, right?
Exactly.
Like that's what you're talking about.
Right. You know, and so capitalism is morphed so quickly that the film industry now is in a really bad space. But part of the reason that the film industry is in a bad space is because people can't imagine a world after capitalism. So a film that infuriated the fuck out of me was that movie Don't Look Up.
Which one's Don't? I didn't see that. I didn't see that.
With Leonardo DiCaprio, right?
I did not see that.
Where it's like, you know, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is to imagine a world that's a post-capitalist world.
Yeah. Right.
You get what I mean?
Right.
And
like that's the only stage, right?
Right. And it's a comedy, and I understand what it's saying, but the thing that infuriated me about it is that I don't think that people really got that.
No.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Definitely did not.
I mean, that level, I haven't seen it, but like that level of analysis, I don't think.
I've talked to people who've seen it, and that nothing
don't get that.
close to that has ever came.
You know what I mean?
No.
But I don't think
I
people
wasn't
do
really
see
thinking
past capitalism. They don't see anything else, right? Like, even when we talk about inflation, it's like, oh, this costs so expensive. Well, don't buy it.
Right.
But nobody, like, a lot of people can't even see themselves, like, not buying the juice for $7. That's when you know consumerism is, like, fully embedded and indoctrinated in the lives of people and Americans, right?
Speaking of not buying, this is a good transition. We're going to talk about our favorite films, right?
Okay.
And I'm interested in hearing from somebody who is you have like a library in your head.
perspective,
And a
yeah.
different
Favorite
perspective.
directors.
Favorite directors.
Right.
Sorry. What do you think about these films? So you want to start? You want to go
Sure,
first?
start.
All right.
Go ahead.
You already poo-poo my guy.
Wait, who was that?
So let's say it. Who's your favorite
M.
director?
Night Shyamalan.
Why?
Okay. I'm always drawn to his movies. I think mainly because I like to be entertained. I like thrillers. My favorite genre is horror. I know he's not a horror person, but I like
No, but there's an element.
Yes, there's an element
There's
to
the
it.
scare element to
there's
it.
a
yeah.
scare element to it. And what I also admire about his films is it's usually centered around family or some type of childhood trauma or drama. Right? So that's what kind of draws me to him. I mean, everybody loved The Sixth Sense, so I'm not going to talk about The Sixth Sense.
What's your favorite film by him?
Well, it's going to be The Sixth Sense, but a close one is going to be The Village. Another one's going to be
That's the one with the air.
No, it's the one with the Amish.
Oh, the Amish.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one's going to be The Visit, which didn't do that well. I haven't written down, I'm sorry.
What about the one with the elevator?
The Devil.
Devil. I like that.
I liked it too.
Yeah.
So what I really wanted to talk about, the films that worked for him and as far as box office. Like, I'm just going around the ones that did not make 100 million, right?
And is that the mark
wouldn't-
now? That's
It's
right.
not-
That's
no,
what
no,
this
no,
is.
no, it's not
Wouldn't
really
that
the
only
mark.
be the Sixth Sense? Wouldn't that only be his?
The only movie that made 100 million.
No, his movies make money.
Yeah.
The trilogy did
don't
well.
rate well.
Glass.
Oh, that's
the
right, yeah,
trilogy did
right.
very well.
Right.
Right. So
Breakable.
they make money, but they don't review well.
Right. After Earth, that everybody hated. I like that movie. I didn't
He-
love it.
What was
directed
After
He
Earth with
did.
Will?
He directed
Will?
After
It
Earth.
made-
With Will
it-
Smith? He
Well, that
did
wasn't
that.
so bad.
I didn't know that.
I was like, yeah.
It
Wow.
made like $250 million.
Oh, okay, all right, all right.
I didn't know he made that movie.
Yeah, but that seems to be a radical departure for him.
Right, it was. But people poo-pooed that
They
movie.
hate that movie.
The,
I think it's because they hate Jaden Smith, and
I don't hate him.
Like,
I mean, I like this.
you know,
man.
they.
But so the next one is the Last Airbender. I did not like that movie at all.
Got
but it
bad
did
reviews.
very
I
well.
didn't like
It
got
did
very
very
bad
well.
reviews.
And
Oh,
the
yeah,
one
that was
that
not-
everybody seemed to hate, but it did well, was The Happening.
Is that the one with the air?
I didn't see
When they
that
were
one.
falling out of the sky and
Mark
it was a-
Wahlberg, right?
Mark Wahlberg. I like that one.
Mark Wahlberg.
Right?
What?
I
You
like
like
that.
you like the happening?
But you didn't. There's
That
some
one I
things
like.
about it you did. So you didn't like it at all.
But listen, I tried until they were running from the wind. I'm like, what? How
I know
can you
that was
outrun?
funny. That
How
was
can you
so
outrun the
dumb.
wind?
I know it was dumb.
Yeah, but
But you know-
but my question to you is this:
It was like an attempt to be Hitchcockian, but failing for me.
right. But the thing is, like at that, like you can't run from the wind. But does that mean you're just gonna be like, I can't run from the wind, or you gonna try?
I guess you would try.
You're gonna try.
but
you
it just
know,
the premise seems silly to me.
Maybe,
Like,
but
to put the characters in that position.
But think about it like this: it's a silly premise in that the wind is carrying this disease, but then we had COVID.
Yeah, that's, airborne.
You know what I mean?
And
we had
more
COVID.
and more airborne
Ah.
diseases are.
But yeah, if COVID made me walk into traffic, I guess it'd be the same.
Yeah.
I mean,
all right.
Okay, so what is your criticism
But so
of?
Signs is my I forgot it. That is my all-time favorite. Next to The Sixth Sense. I thought Signs was such a great movie.
So what is your criticism of him
But-
as a director?
Or if you don't have them, you know.
he's gimmicky.
Okay,
Oh.
He's gimmicky.
Oh, can I talk about Trap, the newest
I
one?
dreamt this.
Oh,
I
boy.
actually I liked it.
I didn't see it,
But listen, I didn't know what I was walking into. The only reason I really went to see it is because I knew we were
Well,
doing
let's say this because it's on my. Is it? Should we go see it? Should anybody
Yes.
really? So so
First
before
of all,
you
Josh
1 out of 10.
Hartnett?
Josh Hartnett's amazing.
Oh my
Josh
goodness.
Hartnett's amazing.
I always forget because he always disappears and comes back.
But he's always in
But
good
he was
stuff.
great.
And he was great in
always.
Oppenheimer
He was
too.
I did not see that.
He was great in Oppenheimer.
He was
So
great.
you-
Remember Penny Dreadful?
I love that show.
He was great in
I
PD.
love that show.
Okay, so
I
I
loved
want you
him in
guys to
30 Days
focus. I need you to focus.
Right.
Because this show is not about Josh Hartnett, right?
It should be.
It's about directors. That'll be another
But no,
episode.
So what I'm saying about Trap is I didn't know what I was walking into. The fact that that movie was a concert more than anything was super cool to me.
That
And his daughter was
That
good.
hooked
She's
me.
engaging, right?
I didn't know his daughter was in it.
Yeah,
She's like the main character.
Are you-
She plays like a she's a huge pop star.
I'm definitely gonna see
And
it.
she really is a musician.
I'm definitely gonna see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say go see it.
Sold.
You've given me
So-
like 2 or 3
But
films.
what I will say that's interesting is the movies that did not do well was the one that we talked about, Cabin.
Oh,
The
Cabin
Woods.
in the Woods.
I like that.
Cabin
I love
at-
that movie.
Yeah.
And I just wonder.
Knock at the door.
So the ones that
Knock at the door. Sorry.
Cabin,
Yeah, we got.
So that didn't do well. Devil
Knock at the
didn't
cabin
do
door.
well. Devil didn't do well.
Knock at the cabin.
And I'm
door.
wondering, was it because the Cabin movie was about a gay couple?
Yeah, I was going to ask
Was
you.
Devil because they thought that it was? I mean, was it because Christians didn't want to see these movies?
I mean,
That's not it.
not
You
only
don't think
because
so?
it was like about like a gay couple, but it was kind of highly religious, right? Don't you think? I mean, I don't know if
Well,
that would
the attackers were.
right.
Spoiler.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know if that is something that people would detract people from seeing a film or not.
I don't think so. In my opinion,
And they
You're right.
maybe they didn't like the idea of the gay couple
but
being
this
like
is the thing. When I watched that trailer,
you didn't
It was
know.
constructed in such a way that wasn't a focus for me. Like
Yeah.
the relationship between the two men was not the focus. I'm like, why is Dave Bautista
But
in a button-down shirt with no sleeves standing in this guy's doorway?
but they did
Like, what's going
save
on with
they
that, right?
did
Like-
save the world, right? Essentially
did.
Right.
sorry.
Spoiler.
alert. Sorry.
He's been out
You
for
should
a
still
while
see
now.
it.
Come
Like,
on, bro.
if you
Yeah,
haven't
it's
seen
been
it
out,
now,
it's been out,
like
I know.
You know,
just check it out,
We
right?
apologize for that.
I mean, but it
They saved the world. So like the idea of like this gay couple, right?
Yeah, but
like,
I don't
kinda
think people
saving-
knew that before they saw the film.
I mean,
Right.
but you hear about it and you don't
Right,
see it
right,
again.
yeah,
I mean, if you saw it,
exactly.
it's like, oh my God, I didn't know this
movies
was about
like,
I hear
movies
that,
move through buzz,
I hear
right?
that, but I think we're making it too complicated.
Okay.
Maybe.
I think
But I
people.
we want to hear from
I-
you.
people
Like,
have avoided-
how about we hear from our audience and let
Yeah, you
them
guys
tell
let
us.
us know what.
that's true. Yeah, tell
You
us
guys
in
let us know
comments
if
why-
M. Night Shyamalan was coming out with a movie next weekend. How many of you would go rush to go get pre-tickets?
Wait,
today?
that's not the question. The question
No,
is,
it is.
why people
didn't
is.
didn't
support, that
support
movie.
this
Well,
movie.
that- well, that goes to my.
But
That,
people in general
crap.
don't support movies.
that's my question.
Okay,
That's true,
got
but
you.
no, what I'm
Got
In
saying
general,
is as
the
far
box
as-
office is down like
No,
30,
it is.
40%.
But when I looked at his box office and Trap is going to make 100 million, and I'm not saying 100 million is a lot.
Right, right.
I'm just that is,
But-
that is
but
what
it
I
doesn't
based
matter.
it on.
What he
but
doesn't, what the thing
Cabin
is, how much did
not
it
going
cost him to
make
make it?
anyway. No, I know. No.
That's
all
what, no,
that,
but that's what I'm saying to you is what
yes,
what
They all
dictates
made money.
success
they all.
is
Yeah,
how
they-
much money. So I think
Right.
he made Trap for like $30 million.
Right.
So if he's on
So
track,
far, it's like it's like 75.
right. So what you become profitable,
And-
as the Dominicans say, dique, when you get to 3 to 4 times your budget.
Yeah.
Okay, because so you have 30 million. If you made the movie for 30 million, 30 million goes in what they call P&A, promotion and advertising.
Yeah.
So it's a $60 million budget.
Mm.
So you have a $60 million nut.
Mhm.
Then the theaters get their slice. So the $30 million that you make at the box office, or the $60 million you make at the box office, they still get their piece.
Mhm.
So you're not getting all that. The studio's
Not
not
getting
getting
So
all
that
that.
money doesn't
Understood.
come off the top. Jesus.
It
Right.
does.
No.
The way the theaters work is that, here's the thing. People think that movie theaters are in the business of showing movies.
They're not.
They're not. They're in the business of
Selling
selling
popcorn.
popcorn and soda.
Exactly.
Right. The concessions are the right.
$20 popcorn.
Right. That's the reason why the popcorn is so expensive, right? And people always go, I'm not buying the popcorn because, and I go, if you don't buy the
I
popcorn,
want to see the movies.
then the theater won't be there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
When I go to the movies now, what are we paying? Like $50, $50?
That's why I'm always trying to get my
I go to
discount
the
tickets before we go to the
Alamo,
movies.
like,
I'm like, we need our AMC tickets. Okay.
That's the reason people don't go to the movie.
Right.
Because it's expensive.
It's expensive.
So let me
Yeah.
let me just say this real quick before we transition to your favorite director.
Okay.
I think that M. Night Shyamalan has done this to himself. I
Me-
think that coming out with something like The Sixth Sense, which was incredible,
Yeah.
so well done, so well acted, so well put together, And even Signs, which I thought was not as great as The Sixth Sense, but very good.
Very good, yeah.
And then come out with something like Lady in the Water, which was trash.
I didn't see it.
I mean, but
Watch Lady in the Water and then look at what films came after that.
Yeah.
And
I
then
think,
watch
I
the
think you guys are
trajectory.
spending too much time on M. Night Shyamalan.
Is that a segue into the next?
Well, I was segueing.
Oh
I was
my
segueing. I was
God.
segueing.
Jesus.
But I will say that I do like if a movie does come out by him, because I do like what he tries to do. I like that he does take risks.
Mhm.
I will go see it, but I also understand why people don't.
It's always
I'll
a
say-
gimmick.
And what? And
There is
it's
always
because
a gimmick.
Is that why you think people don't see it? Is because there's a gimmick?
I say it because Lady in the Water was such a terrible film and hyped to be such a great film
Yeah.
that, that kind of put a blemish on the glow that was M. Night Shyamalan.
Great though.
Mhm.
Unbreakable came out and that brought,
But Unbreakable came out before the lady.
Oh, so then there you go.
Right,
Maybe
yeah.
making my
Yeah,
point
it
even more so.
Right.
So he came out with these bangers,
Right.
these like genre shifting.
Although a lot
type
of people
things.
didn't really like. I thought a lot of people
didn't like the ending of
Unbreakable.
Unbreakable. Right.
Out of the
which
trilogy,
I
because-
loved.
right,
Right.
it's a
out
comic-
of that trilogy, Unbreakable did the worst.
Wow.
Glass-
Financially.
Yeah, financially, Glass did the
okay.
best.
Yeah.
That's
Split-
interesting.
Split did the
Because I
best
thought
Glass.
And for me, Unbreakable is
Glass
the
was
best
the worst.
one. Agree.
I love
Unbreakable is the
Right.
best.
You made me love. You
I
made me
thought
watch
Glass was the
Unbreakable.
worst.
Unbreakable
right?
is like one of the best superhero movies.
Right. It's the
ever.
best.
You know,
It is
no.
the blueprint for a
Oh, yeah.
It's okay.
I know.
It's a-
No,
origin
it's-
story.
Yeah, I love them.
Yeah.
Those,
To you.
those three films aren't so bad.
Yeah.
Your favorite director.
So I won't say he's my favorite director, but he is one of my favorite directors who kind of fell out of favor for a while with me. And now I'm kind of coming to some like at peace with him as like a director. And that's Spike Lee.
Okay.
And I'm naming Spike Lee. There are a lot of directors that I love. There are a lot of directors that like I could probably name. John Waters being one of them. We talked about the other day. I like subversive stuff, and I just love. I like Spike Lee's his ability to sort of tackle topics that have not been kind of tackled in the mainstream media when he first came on the scene, right? And messages and stories that like spoke to me as like a Black man, right? As a African American. And so one of my favorite films of all time is Do the Right Thing. I grew up in New York City. I grew up in Brooklyn. I grew up here in the 80s. That story resonated for me. Even though it wasn't necessarily my experience, I didn't grow up in Bed-Stuy, but I remember going to see that film in like 48th Street with all of my friends. Apparently, I took my two little cousins who were like 10 years old to go see it. But the story was just really, it spoke to the times, right? It spoke to New York City. It is the epitome of a New York City story, right? The hottest day of the summer, right? And you have all these heavy hitters who are not quite heavy hitters just yet, right? You have Samuel Jackson, you have Esposito, a young Rosie Perez. Who else? There are countless people who are in this.
Martin Lawrence.
Martin Lawrence is in it, right?
Pizza owner. What was?
Of course, John Turturro, who is
Yes.
one of my
John
favorite
Turturro.
actors, and then the father,
Yes.
Danny Aiello.
Danny Aiello, who I love. All these are actors that I truly love. I love John Turturro as an actor, right?
Amazing.
And so, but it also it had a message to it, right? And it did have a message of resistance, right? Like it had a message that it talked about gentrification. It talked about the changing of
John
neighborhoods.
Savage.
It talked about like the changing of ethnicities in neighborhoods, how people have to live together and clash with one another. One of my favorite scenes is when the guy has brought a brownstone in Bed-Stuy, and like he has a
John
Celtic.
Savage, yeah,
He's doing everything that New Yorkers hate, right? Especially in 1988, right? Like you're a Celtics fan, we hate you. You know what I mean? We don't hate you because you're white, but you're like in Bed-Stuy in 1988 in a brownstone where there are people in this community who probably cannot afford a brownstone, and you done stepped on brothers' sneakers, right? So it's just like, it's a brilliant film. Robin Harris is in it, who was one of my favorite comedians
I
of
forgot
all
about
time.
him,
The lines
yes.
from that are like some of the funniest lines I've ever heard in my day.
I
And they
miss
also
him.
talk about immigration, right? Like in this whole idea about a tension between African Americans and Caribbean-born people, right? Where he tells them like, you know, you just got off the boat. He's like, he says, well, you know, you guys keep arguing or whatever, but here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go over there and get me a beer. Move the F out the way, you know, it's military motherfuckers. You just got off the boat and you trying to talk about somebody else. So it's just a really complex and really beautifully made movie. The end scene is just like very provocative. And I think, you know, Spike Lee gets a bad rap for being provocative, right? But I think he has something really to say. Like when these things are happening in your community, to the story of resistance, right? To you, Vagabond, right? When your neighborhood is being dismantled for what, like structurally, systematically, or whatever. When you have people policing your community who don't come from your community. When you have when you can't afford to live in your community. When you know.
When people look at you as if
when people look at you like you're foreign in your community, right? As a resident of Harlem for nearly 25 years, I can relate, right?
Brooklyn,
right? Growing up in Brooklyn and going to school in Fort Greene, right? I went to Brooklyn Tech. Shout out to Brooklyn Tech, right? Like there were just so many things from this movie that just spoke to me, right? And it's not just Do the Right Thing, although you know Do the Right Thing was very powerful for me. You know, of course they had the video, right? And Spike Lee's joint was literally right across the street from our high school. His studio was in that area. So it holds a special place for me, but he was just really a brilliant filmmaker. This is right after She's Gotta Have It, which I thought was brilliant. I probably was like 12. No, I was probably 13 or 14 when She's Gotta Have It came out. But for me, it really spoke to the agency of women, right? Like it spoke to like, you know, like you can be a woman and you can fuck whoever you want, excuse my language, right? And there is nothing wrong. And there is nothing wrong with you. You can, if a man can have 4 and 5 different women, a woman can have 4 and 5 different men to meet her needs. And you know what? I thought that was very innovative and very refreshing for women to hear, because guess what? Maybe there's a possibility for all of us that maybe one person won't meet all of our needs. Yeah. Right. So it was like kind of dealing with polyamory before people even knew what polyamory was. And you know what? It was put in the face of this heteronormative model of like black men. Like, guess what? I got a side piece. So like, go back and do what you're doing. When I'm ready to see you and when I'm ready for you to give me what I need from you, then I'll check you. Very innovative. Very like, very feminist, right? Like very womanist. So one of my favorite films. But then, you know, he also, so those are 2 of my favorite films. School Days is a beautiful film. It's a musical.
I love it.
He got a lot of flack for it. They're like, why are you doing a musical? Well, guess what? Black people come from a tradition of music. How about that, right? And we come from a tradition of like, right, spectacle and HBCUs and line dancing and big band, right? So this movie, right? And I didn't go to a HBCU. Me and Brendon, we're Trinidadian. We don't know anything about fraternities or sororities. But for me, that spoke to something that was really powerful, right? It was like, oh, what does it mean to go to an HBCU? And it also spoke to me, talked about colorism. Yeah. Right? In a time, you know, he was one of the first before social media to like air out dirty laundry and make people uncomfortable and like squirm in their skin. It's like, oh shit, like, oh yeah, they are looking at me because I'm darker, right? We do have this, right? That was a real thing. I mean, and I was getting ready to say, oh, we're African Americans. No, we have it within our Caribbean people. We know how we are. You know what y'all do. We know what we do, right? So it was like powerful, and people didn't want to hear it. They weren't prepared for it. Yeah. They weren't prepared for a woman who had multiple partners, right? Like they could have multiple partners, but they weren't prepared to hear a woman have multiple partners. They weren't prepared to have a black man say like, I don't need this damn job. Fuck this job. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And not prepared to talk about the complexities of being, right? Because what that movie is really a class movie on some levels, and colorism that happens within class, right?
Yeah. But do you know that he used that to his advantage? So like
you used to work with Spike on a.
I worked on Do the Right Thing.
Oh my God! You're like, I'm not worthy.
What?
I was a glorified water boy.
Doesn't matter.
I
He was
stood
you were
inside
part
of
of something
Sal's for 3
magnificent.
days with cups of water, making sure people were hydrated. But that was an amazing experience. I mean, that really jump-started my
Can you get some
whole...
details though? Like
Yeah.
like what?
I mean, so it's like Luis Antonio is in there. He's been in a bunch of TV shows. Martin Lawrence, when nobody knew who... These are the dudes that were just sitting on a stoop.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Bill Second to None.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we used to call him. His name was Bill
Yeah.
Nunn. We used to call
Yeah.
him Bill Second to None. Then the thing that, for me as a young punker, was that I was working with Richard Edson,
Mm-hmm.
who was the original drummer for Sonic Youth.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's crazy.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, and then there's Ruby Dee and Ozzie Davis.
God. Oh my
You know?
God.
And then-
what? How could I leave them out?
Sam
You guys
Jackson.
didn't do anything. I mean, come on. These
Sam
are
Jackson.
Sam
Before
Jackson.
Sam Jackson was Sam
Yeah,
Jackson.
right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Where he was Mace Windu.
And it was just like, and then those are only the people that were in it. Then people would come by the set because it was a big deal.
Sure.
It was a big deal. And I have to say, I like some of, Spike was like it for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I tracked him down,
Yeah.
literally. Like I tracked down his thesis
You mean when you were like
when I was young.
trying to become a filmmaker?
Because there was nobody
That's
else.
what's up, man.
There
That
was
is
nobody else to
dope.
look to. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
So
There was
how
nobody
did
else to look to.
How were you able to get involved in this movie?
So what happened was the first film that I ever worked on, I got out of the back of the Village Voice. It was an ad.
What?
Remember that? Remember
The
those?
Village Voice.
Yeah.
And it said
I
they
never,
needed-
I never.
They needed a production assistant,
Yeah.
and they were paying $50 a week.
That's awesome.
And I was like, bet. The only problem was it was in fucking Staten Island.
Oh
Wow.
my God.
And I lived in Jamaica, Queens.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh
I
my
couldn't-
God.
I
Back in the
I couldn't
days.
get no
Back
further
in
if I
the days.
tried.
Holy cow.
Okay? We talk about an hour, 45-minute commute minimum.
It's like another world.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
right? So, you know, I was 18 years old. I did that. And there was a girl that was working with, who was on that film. And she was like, you know, Spike Lee's doing a movie out in Brooklyn. We should go work on it. And so we went to the set. And I walked onto the set and I was like, I want to work.
Yeah.
And they were like, we don't have no paid positions. I was like, I didn't ask to get paid. I said, I want to work.
You were hungry. You were hungry, man.
Wow.
That's
And they were like,
awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were doing this. right?
Yeah.
And they were like, well, you need to be here tomorrow at 7 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
That
said,
was New York in that during
But
that
can I
period,
ask you
right?
something? Do they still do that? Or does everybody want a paycheck now?
I mean, I don't know. I'll put you
You
this
wouldn't
way.
know because
So
you're
I
not
would-
in you
No,
But
the thing is that I don't know. So that it's a different thing. So like when I was working early on, which is 1988. So if you watch people making a film on the street,
Yeah.
right? People don't care
Right.
because they can put themselves on TV.
Right.
Back then, nobody could put
See, that's what
themselves
I
on.
mean.
See, but this is what I'm saying. That's what I was talking about in terms of being hungry, right? Like,
Right.
there's a time that 80s, which I think some people
But
don't
I
get,
was
like,
but I was
they're-
literally hungry.
right,
Like my parents left to go on vacation.
right,
I had no money,
right.
and I didn't have any food at home.
But I think that's the thing about New York City during this
And
time,
I knew that
right?
while I was working, they had to feed me.
Right, right.
So my
You
problem,
got your meals.
so my problem
That's
was how do I eat over the
crazy.
weekend?
Right, right.
And
Wow.
and so the guy who was doing props, the 1 year of film school that I did, he was the guy who gave out the equipment.
Right.
And so he had remember the Korean
Mhm.
store across the street,
Mhm.
right? So at the back of the Korean store, he had like 5 boxes of Captain Crunch that nobody was ever going to
My
see.
God.
So I told him, man, I ain't got nothing to eat, bro, for this weekend. So he would give me a box of Captain Crunch, and that's what I ate over the weekends.
Wow.
What?
Yeah,
Wow.
I ate Captain Crunch over the weekend when my family was in Florida.
So I'm just gonna imagine it. Like, I'm sure there are
but
young.
that's the
Right.
thing that
Right.
you know. And they were like, when I showed up at 7 a.m., they were like,
Oh, he
okay.
really came.
Right,
Oh,
yeah.
well, let's see what happens at the end of this day.
Yeah.
Let's burn this boy down
Yeah.
for 13, 14 hours.
And what they
right?
have you doing?
And they had me hydrating the set. My job was to make sure
carrying
that there
water
was
to
water in
people,
the
yeah.
But
coolers.
you still got to eat, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Anybody who was working
Craft.
got to eat. Craft service.
Craft
and
service.
Oh, hey.
I would stuff my pockets with craft service.
I've never had craft service before, by the way, but I know about
Fridays
it.
I would
I
get
know.
all the food from the caterer. You know what I mean? 'Cause-
Absolutely.
That's
and you
Did
know,
you ever meet Spike?
Yeah, we had an argument.
About
You are
So
hilarious.
so during the famous ice cube scene, they're having a closed set,
Yeah.
right? And so they were like, okay, you need to go upstairs and make sure that there's ice on the set. Not for that scene, but to make sure there's an ice cooler,
Okay.
there's waters, that the people who are on the closed set don't have to need anything.
Right. For those of you who don't know, the ice scene he's talking about is the ice scene between Spike Lee and Rosie Perez, right? Check it out if you haven't seen the movie.
And so it's a closed set because it's a sex scene and only the people who need to be in the room should be in the room, right?
That's good.
And so I go and I'm filling all the coolers and making sure everything's right because I can't come back up here till they're finishing the scene. Nobody can come back up here, right? So I go up there, and so Spike is sitting on the bed, and he's waiting for people setting up lights, and everybody's doing the setup. And he says to me, "Are you going to film school?" I said, "Well, I went to film school. I went to going to visual arts." He said, "I said I just
SVA,
School of Visual Arts, right?" And he was like, "Are you going back?" And I said, "Nah, I'm not going back. No way, not going back." And he was like, "You need to go back." And I was like, "I don't think so." He was like, "You have to go back and get your education." And I was like, "But I am getting it. But I am getting an education, And he was like, what kind of education are you getting?" I said, "I'm learning more here with you than I was in film school." And I was paying them $10,000, and you're not paying me, but I'm also not paying you.
Well, I'm gonna tell you. One of my friends'
that
kids
was
go.
a great argument, though.
What did he say?
So how did that?
He was like, "You need to go back to film school," and I was like, "Me and school don't get along."
How did it escalate?
And that was how it escalated. It was back and forth. And he was like, "Well, what about film theory?" I said, "Well, I took 1 year of film theory. I have a basis of it. And, I would go into bookstores and I would go into the film section and I would pick up books. And like I say, I'm autodidactic. So I would find things that interested me and then find my way into things. You know what I mean?
Do you think he took that position because of his middle class background? Like,
oh, I think so. I think if you look at everybody he's ever hooked up, it's all been people who have been to school,
classically trained kind of people.
Yeah. You know what I mean? But it's also an industry thing.
It is an industry thing.
It's an industry thing. So when they talk about diversity, they talk about, and I've gotten into this argument. I was just talking to my girlfriend about this because the IFP, which is now the Gotham, had this HBO diversity initiative, right? And so I was like, I'm tired of this bullshit. You know what I mean? This fucking
because they're not being honest about that part of it, right?
Because it's diversity from NYU,
right,
Columbia,
Tisch, right, Yale,
USC,
School of Drama,
UCLA, AFI,
right.
So
Goodman, right.
We got the queer person from AFI. We got the trans person from NYU,
right.
We got the black woman from Columbia, right? And it's like. It's all funneling through.
So right now,
the same thing. So I wrote that in my application. I was like, your diversity is not diverse because you keep pulling from the same places.
Right.
I have a high school diploma.
Right.
I've worked in the industry for 30 plus years.
Right.
I know what I'm doing.
So you're kind of schooling our audience because I don't think people realize, right? There are a lot of people who come here who want to be actors, right? But there is a
hierarchy,
a thread, right, of people who are classically trained and go to these places that populate and produce and reproduce talent, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to be an actor, and it's not just acting, it's like
it's
with everything, right?
Everything.
It's with I'm a professor, so with there is a school, there are schools that you go to and you're desirable.
Let me say
that's
this.
what we see in entertainment. And that's
let me
what
say
you're
this.
talking about.
There's a clip from 1960 of Orson Welles doing an interview, right? And the guy says, Orson Welles directed a film called Citizen Kane, which did things that no one had ever done ever in
Which
film.
is considered one of the greatest films of all
time. It is
time.
the number
greatest,
one film on the American Film Institute. It's the first film,
the number
right?
one, right?
And part of it,
First film to do what?
it's the number
It's
one
the number one film of all time.
Sort of like it's a
tell
canon.
a non-serious
It's an American
Right.
canon.
Yeah,
Oh no, I know what it
but it
is.
also it's one of the first films to do like a non-linear tale.
Right.
Okay.
It jumps around. The film jumps around, but it also structurally it does things that had never been done before, but it also does things technically. This thing called deep focus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he says, well, you got away with the, really amazing things technically, right? And Orson Welles just goes, and he says, where did you get the confidence And Orson Welles cuts him off. So it's ignorance. He says, there's nothing rival confidence like
yeah.
ignorance.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And he goes, what do you mean? He says, I didn't know that you couldn't do things. I thought the camera could see whatever people see.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you couldn't. And he said, I had a cameraman who wasn't afraid to fail. And that's how we were able to get away with things that we were able to get away with. And he says, he's like, look, everything you need to know about filmmaking, you could learn about a day and a half.
Yeah. I think that's such an important conversation.
And that's something, so that's the thing that's troublesome about these schools and these classically trained people.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not against classically trained, but what I'm saying is like it winds up putting you
It's
within
like
a certain it's a sausage factory.
Yeah, it's a factory.
Right.
And the other thing too is that like to go back to my political roots, right? When my grandfather found out I was working in the Puerto Rican independence movement, he said, leave that alone. And that's weird because he was a follower of Albizu. Albizu was like the Malcolm X of Puerto Rico, except, so like Albizu is the one who sent those two assassins to shoot Truman. He was not playing. He also sent Lolita to shoot up the Congress, right? He's not playing. He also had set up a revolution in 1950 against the whole United States government.
Kind of like a mastermind, like a
right. He was like he was the
he was the
sort of like the intellectual. And he was an intellectual leader, but he was also he was a dangerous person in that he mixed theory with praxis. Okay, so. But to go back to my political roots, in a certain sense, I lost my thread now. I'm sorry.
We were talking.
It's all right, because actually I want to transition to
sure
because we're running out of time, of course, as we always do. So I'm going to get to this real quick. I'm going to shoot out my 3 favorite, and then I'll just let you go. So my first one that came to mind, there's a bunch. The first one that came to mind was one of the first movies that I actually saw that made me actually look at the screen and just wonder if, I mean, it was almost like art house to me at the time because I was a kid and I'm watching films. Obviously, they weren't of this level, but Stanley Kubrick and 2001 Space Odyssey. Like, I remember seeing that for the first time and just watching those long cuts. For instance, like the one where he's jogging throughout the entire spaceship, right? And I just remember there was a point too where there was a scientist who went out to do like a spacewalk type thing. And he goes out and the only thing you hear is like the music, but then it goes away. And all you hear is just his breathing.
Yeah.
Right?
I remember that.
And then something happens. If you haven't seen 2001 Space Odyssey, please see this film. He loses his oxygen. And the whole time, all you hear is, and then all of a sudden, you just hear him gasping, and then you hear nothing. So you just see him spinning out into space, into this void, and there's no sound on the screen. It's just him.
No one can hear you scream.
No one can hear you scream in space.
Alien.
Right? So, but for me, it blew my mind. Why? There's no air.
There's no air in space.
And I felt that it's when I first got how dangerous space was.
Right.
Was seeing that. Was being like, oh my God, space is dangerous. Right? And then the end of the film, of the theatrical cut, when you go through that corridor or whatever he's going through to the end with all the lights, you know, and then the main character's in a bed and he's an old man and then he, if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, spoiler, but he dies and then there's a baby and there's a rebirth. And I've watched it so many times and I realized the dude running like this, like it's all a loop, it's circle, it's life and death.
Right.
The whole thing of just not him, but of like humanity.
Right.
Yeah.
Like with the apes banging on the rocks and the monolith there.
Right.
It's just a metaphor for
It's also the thing where you're floating.
Yes.
So you're ungrounded.
Yeah. You feel that way the entire film.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So Stanley Kubrick is one of my favorites. And another one, I'm gonna throw it out there. I know you know, is Chris Nolan.
I like Chris Nolan. I like Chris Nolan because he does really great things. Again, like we were talking about with Citizen Kane.
Mm-hmm.
The structure.
Yeah.
The structure of his films is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't like his politics.
Okay.
Yeah, me neither. And the last one.
Well, what about his brother?
The last
Or
one.
him
Oh,
and
he
his
died. Tony Scott.
Same thing?
One of my favorite movies, Man on Fire, is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah,
with-
that's a
with
great
Denzel
film.
Washington.
I
That's
love
Tony
that
Scott.
movie. Yeah.
It's amazing. The last one is Ridley Scott.
Ridley Scott's a good filmmaker. I
He's a
mean,
good
he's
filmmaker.
uneven, but he keeps taking chances and even
Did I say Ridley Scott already?
no.
Okay.
But
you say who?
even his Ridley Scott,
Okay, yeah.
even his bad films are
Yeah.
decent enough to watch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, you know, people tear him apart all the time, but it's because, you know, part of it is because these people are really, they're so they've done films that are so, you know, that have defined the zeitgeist.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
This is so.
Like
I
Alien.
was debating.
Yeah.
One of the things I was debating was to say Francis Ford Coppola, because he has a film coming out that everybody's going to hate.
Which is what?
Megalopolis.
Okay.
Why?
It's coming out.
Why do you think
They're going to
would-
hate it
do
because
you think
because
it's
it's
gonna-
gotten mixed reviews. He's doing some kind of crazy stuff. He put up his own money. There are two filmmakers that I have a soft spot for lately. I'm not a big fan of Kevin Costner, but I really feel like people are tearing him apart because he put his own money up to make his
For
film
this-
Horizon.
For this Horizon movie.
Right, for this thing, right? And it's like, you know, the first rule of filmmaking that they say is
Don't put up your own
don't
money.
put up your own money, right? And these guys are breaking it constantly. And it's like Coppola spent $120 million to make this film. Nobody wants to distribute it, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And it's like, even if it's a bad film, it's going to be interesting.
So is it going to
And
make
he's
it to
got
the,
something to say.
is it going to make it to the theaters, or is it just
Yes,
going
it's
to be
going
for
to be,
streaming?
it's Lionsgate is distributing the film.
Okay, so Lionsgate.
There's going to be
Okay.
a huge IMAX run.
Mhm.
I'm intending to go. I think it opens on the 24th of September. But he's a filmmaker who has taken massive risks. And I have there's maybe 4 of his films that are in my all-time favorites, which is, The Godfather, Godfather 1 and 2. I even like Godfather 3.
I love
Did you? Did you
I
like
like Godfather.
I
Godfather
did
3?
too.
I did too.
I like Godfather 3 as well.
Here's the funny thing. The Godfather 3 is about how people with money
Mhm.
wash their sins
Right.
Okay.
through philanthropy,
Right.
right? And so it's all about how Michael is going to give $1 billion to Immobiliare, which is the Catholic Church's
Mhm.
investment
This is
bank,
about
right?
redemption, right?
And then 15 years after that, right? There's a massive scandal where the mob has been washing money inside the Vatican,
Yeah.
right? And so when people are watching this 15 years before, they're like, this is terrible.
silly.
This is what
Yeah.
is this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? 15 years later, nobody makes the connection.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, that Rumblefish, another mind-bogglingly beautiful.
Rumblefish?
He directed
Well,
Rumble.
Halle Berry?
He sure.
No,
I-
Rumblefish.
No,
No,
What
You're
was
thinking of
that?
Swordfish. That's Michael Bay.
I love Matt Damon, right? What's
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon,
Rumblefish?
yeah.
And Mickey Rourke.
Yeah, I love that
Um,
movie.
Yeah, that's a fantastic
It
film
really
with an incredible score by Stuart Copeland, the drummer from
Of the police.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's all percussion.
Okay.
There's
That's
nothing
amazing.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing else.
Well,
And
I
it's
think
just
we can
gorgeous.
all agree that no directors are perfect. All of
No,
them
All of them
have
have some bad.
some.
But there's definitely a
bad-
difference between the
films.
good and the bad.
I mean, yeah, but even the ones that we all picked,
even
I
the
mean,
best directors.
like you didn't even as much as you don't like M. Night Shyamalan, it's like you didn't realize that he did After Earth, which you actually
I didn't know.
liked.
I know.
And they
So-
caused conversation, right?
And
Like everybody
Spike,
had
I
an
mean,
opinion
saying
about
that
it. Yeah.
Spike, he's had some.
Oh, he has some.
bad-
She Hate Me
Real
is
quick, though,
really
before we,
horrible. Truly
that-
a horrible
the-
movie.
My
Blood
favorite
of
is actually
Jesus or
The
whatever
Blood of
was- I
Jesus.
could not watch.
Mo Better Blues is my favorite one.
Really?
I love Malcolm X is my favorite by Spike.
I saw Mo Better Blues
Yeah, I love Mo
2
Better
years
Blues,
ago at Governor's Island, and I had to I liked it when it came out. I think I was young though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good.
I had a
good
deep
movie.
appreciation for it again,
Yeah,
like seeing it
that
because
was a
it's really a.
great
See, that's what
movie.
the best art is.
What's that?
That's what the best art is.
Yeah,
So the
when
best-
you
so
can go
like-
back to
Yeah.
something and
So when I was 18, my dad was a huge jazz fan,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So we get in the car, and for the New York centric people, there was a DJ in New York. His name was Phil Shapp.
Yeah.
This dude was a walking dictionary, a
Mhm.
walking encyclopedia.
Mm-hmm.
So like he would interview all these old cats, right? So it's like, oh yeah, you played with Miles on that record, right? He's like, yeah, that was recorded at Riverside in Jersey in 1956 on November 30th, and it was raining that night, wasn't it? And dude is like, yeah, it was raining that night. Why do you know all
Wow.
this?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? And so I would listen to that, and then I got intrigued by these stories. And he also had a show called Bird Flight. So
Okay.
it was all Charlie Parker related.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I grew up listening to this music, but not understanding it.
Yeah.
And then I picked up, everybody kept saying, you need to listen to A Love Supreme by,
Yeah, by
John
John
Coltrane.
Coltrane.
and
Yeah.
I listened to it and I was 18. And I had like an epiphany, right? And the epiphany was, I'm not going to understand this. I can't understand this music.
Yes, right.
Because I haven't lived long enough. I don't
Yeah,
have enough life
absolutely.
experience
Yeah.
to understand what John Coltrane is
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about here.
But that's
And what I need to do is put this aside
And come back to
and come
it.
back to it
Before
every
you're
once in a while.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Sure.
And every time I come back to it, I get something else out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And now I'm older than Coltrane.
Yeah.
And I'm still coming back and
But
getting
that's the
things
beauty
out
of it.
That's
You
what
know?
I feel about Billie
That's the beauty
Holiday.
of it,
Like
yeah.
Billie Holiday is like everybody loves her. I'm like, I don't really get it. But as I get older, I'm
Yeah,
like,
I'm still waiting to love her.
I
don't-
get it.
I don't
I
get
get it
it
now.
I don't
Yeah.
get it
But
yet.
But quick,
so like
before-
Apocalypse Now is like that for me.
Yeah.
I go back to it and find something
Ah.
every
Yes.
single
I saw
time.
Apocalypse Now at IMAX Theater at Lincoln Center maybe about 5 years ago.
Right.
And I think I'd seen it before and it did not leave an effect on me. But seeing it this time, it was like, I saw a lot of things that like maybe I didn't pay attention to. Like the whole idea around colonialism.
But
And,
that wasn't in.
Yeah.
That whole scene was cut
It
out.
was cut out.
Real? Okay, so
That
I'm
was
seeing
placed
something.
in.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Okay.
Right.
Vagabond, real quick, before we run out of time, where can people find you? Where can they find what you've been doing?
I'm easy to find.
Where can they find what you've been doing next?
I'm easy to find. You can find me on Facebook, Vagabond Alexander Beaumont. You can find me on Instagram. It's Vagabond without the vowels. So VGBND.
Okay.
You can find me. You can find my Vimeo, which is the name of my company, which is Audiovisual Terrorism.
Yes, it is.
Mhm.
So if you look up Audiovisual Terrorism, and I have a Facebook group page on Facebook with Audiovisual Terrorism. So it's easy to find me. You know,
Excellent.
and you can find my film Machetero movie. You just type in Machetero movie, it'll pop up.
On
And
Vimeo.
when is your book gonna?
My book, I'm trying to finish laying it out now. I'm hoping to have it out before the end of the year. It'll be called The Art of Resistance.
And that was the name of your
Excellent.
exhibit, right? Art of
The
Resistance.
Art of Resistance, Decolonization, Reconstructed, 25 years
Yeah.
of art and agitprop by Vagabond.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent.
I gave it
Excellent.
I gave it a academic.
Oh, did you?
Title.
Title?
You know, it was like the title, then the subtitle,
Yeah,
then the
yeah. I mean,
subtitle.
listen, you would
It's
draw.
almost. I was always going to add an abstract.
You would draw a lot of us with a title named Art of
Yeah.
Resistance.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's a
Professor.
punch. It's a hot
It's
word.
funny too because when I was trying to come up with a name for the show, I was like, "The Art of Resistance," but somebody's got to.
I literally just went to a conference on resistance.
Let everybody know where they can find you.
You can find me on all the social media.
What's your
X at Dr. S. Applewhite.
Are you sure?
I know. I'm like, I had a brain.
You're on there so much, I guess.
I had a brain freeze for a minute.
Like,
Dana
help
Sheldon
me.
Applewhite on Facebook.
What's my name
right,
again?
Right.
What's my name again?
Dr. S. Applewhite on X and on IG.
Sheldon
Sheldon Applewhite.
underscore Apple.
Yeah,
That's right.
Sheldon underscore Applewhite. Sorry, I mean, I don't know. This is what our 4th episode. I'm still not like.
It's all right.
used
It's
to
all right.
giving out
We'll
my
get it. We'll get it.
socials. Yeah,
We'll get it. D.
I'm gonna make it easy. You can find me on Instagram at Dana Dietz. And thanks for the new followers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you guys for following. Thanks you guys for listening.
Where can we find you?
Oh, that's right. I'm Brendon Hamilton. You can find me at Be Music Maker on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram. I'm not on X because I don't support fetishes.
I'm on X. but
I'm on
I
X
don't.
because I kind of
Only because
Yeah.
maybe
You
one
gotta
day he'll
be.
sell it.
There you go. There you go.
So I just
Hopefully
found
he'll
out-
send it. He'll
I've
sell
had
it.
people try to buy my handle.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it.
Elon Musk.
I believe it. I'll get back on once he's no longer a part of it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Me
But
too.
anyway,
thought we
thanks
did-
for the new fans. Thanks everybody for watching on YouTube, and you guys are making us a lot of fun.
Thanks
you
for having
tuning
me.
in. Thank you for
Yeah.
being here at
Yes.
Vagabond.
Yeah.
You
God,
are
you
amazing.
are awesome.
We're definitely gonna have you back.
Yes,
We didn't
yeah.
even get to talk about your shirt. That's a whole other
Nothing.
thing.
That's right. Look.
I know. There it is. There it is. Remember that quote, Martin Scorsese. Thank you for tuning in for the Quest Culture podcast. And this is episode 4.
Episode 4.
That's
Yeah.
right.
In the bag.
In the
right?
bag. See you soon.